All right. My name's Chandler. I'm with Next Shark. It's good to meet all of you.
Nice
Um,
to meet you.
Thank you. It's good to meet all of you. I'd just like to start by saying that I really enjoyed season one, and congratulations, of course, on season two. As an Asian American, it was kind of a big deal for me to see people that looked like me and had similar issues, I think, on TV. So I appreciate you guys doing that and speaking to me today, of course. Um, I guess let's just get started. I've lived in the Austin, San Antonio area myself for a few years now, but I've never gotten the chance to go to Houston. What are some things that you recommend first-time visitors to the city experience?
I think that you definitely have to try out all the different restaurants. You know, we're such a multicultural city and we have so many cuisines to offer. Obviously, Vietnamese is very popular here. And then everything from, barbecue is really popular. And you have Tex-Mex in Austin. But I feel like once people ask for Houston recommendations, I always go for the restaurants first just to get a taste.
That's great. Yeah, I know I've heard a lot about Vietnamese Cajun, and I think I remember in season one, y'all had done a crawfish broil and everything. So that's definitely on my list. Um, here's an interesting question for Washington. When you last spoke with us with Next Shark back in 2019, prior to season one,
Yeah.
regarding your life before Leslie, you had said that you made Dan Bilzerian look like an amateur. I love that quote. But in season one, you call yourself the Asian Bradley Cooper. How would you describe yourself now, or who would you compare yourself to in season two?
Um, I was just talking about this, but I think, you know, Brad Pitt is going through his journey with sobriety and he's settled down a lot. And, that's where I'm at in my life. I had a good time in my 20s and 30s, but right now my focus is on my family. It's on my kids, my wife, and how I can be the leader that I know I can be. And through my journey in sobriety, what I've learned is that every day it takes a lot of work and, nobody gets away from it easy. And so I'm just inspired by my own family and my kids.
Right. Yeah, I think that's clear in season one for sure. It's great to see the growth of your relationship with Leslie. Speaking of that, I loved seeing that growth throughout season one. And Judy, I've been an avid supporter of Nudie since Nate was introduced. As someone that's soon to be married myself, what advice would you give to someone like me as to how to maintain a loving and healthy relationship?
Oh, what really makes me and Nate work, I think, is just being open, about what we need in our relationships, and, Nate is so good about being nurturing and supportive of everything that I'm going through and everything that he's going through. I try to be there for him. So I think it's a real partnership where, like, if he's going through something, then I'm there with him. I never want him to feel alone in anything that he's going through. And he's just been so supportive of the show, even though, he does it as a favor to me. He doesn't do any press, for him to be on camera, he has to take time off from work. And it's just basically we have it, and it's hard to put into words, but, I always know he's in my corner. And at the end of the day, when I come home, our home is our sanctuary, and that's where we build our relationship every day. And I'm just very grateful for that.
All right. What about you, Washington and Leslie? Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I mean, we're still working on, like the communication part, I think has been the biggest with the both of us. I think season one, you see there's not a lot of communication. He goes through stuff alone. He suffers through it alone. I had no idea, and then season two, you kind of see the breakthrough in the clouds where he actually shares stuff with me and I'm not jumping at him, I'm not on the defensive all the time, and it's, we're still working on that to be where Nate and Judy are, right now. But I think for us, just having him tell me just snippets of what he needs.
Chandler, I would say, me and you, we can relate to each other because you're Asian and you're male. And so the way we're raised a lot of times is that vulnerability is weakness. But I would say that what I've learned is vulnerability is strength. And so the more you can be transparent and the more you can communicate with your life partner, then you can set the boundaries that you need, for your marriage to work. And where I suffered before was I lived with a lot of shame and guilt. And I was always, scared to run to my wife or run to my father, who's an Asian male and this really successful guy. I had no one to run to. But, when we get married, we marry our best friend. That's what we are supposed to do. And so we should be able to communicate. And, Leslie's had to accept me for me.
Right. Yeah, no, I can absolutely relate. Would you say that being on camera doing this show has forced you to communicate more than you would have prior, or changed the way that you communicate with one another?
I would say that definitely having a camera on you and having other people watch you and having thoughts of one day your children watching this is that you have to be, honest and confront your problems. I can't run away from my problems. I have to confront them. And that's one thing that I'm really grateful for the show. It's been a lot of work and it's been tough, but we're closer than we've ever been and we're still working on it.
I think it expedites your relationship, stuff that you may not talk about for months, or kind of bubble in for a little bit. We're forced to talk about in front of the cameras. So it kind of puts like pressure on your relationship. So good or bad, but in our case, I don't think we'd be at this point now with him sober if it wasn't for the show.
Yeah, you can fake it till you make it off camera, but when you're on camera, there's no faking it. So
That's great. Oh, speaking of your children, where was my question? Oh, you all voiced your opinions on how your parents raised you, Leslie with your parents, and then of course, Washington and Judy with your own. And there are similarities, but none of you really had the exact same experience. What have you taken away from the way that your parents raised you all, and what are you doing differently in raising your own children, of course?
My parents always, made us strive for excellence. I also want that for my children. I just go a different way about it. I feel like my parents were very much like punished us and, we got a belt if I didn't make straight A's, and, I'm not going to do that to my children. I would just try to encourage them and help them to try better. My parents just, they grew up in it was a different time back then. They had just come over here and they were just trying to do what they knew was best at the time. And, now that, we've lived here, I just want my children to thrive under different circumstances and feel very like I'm behind them, and not that they should be afraid of me in case they mess up or anything. And they can always come to me and I will help them, and I'm not going to shame them, and they shouldn't feel guilt in any way. That I'm on their side.
Yeah, for me, Judy and I, we were raised by the same parents. So there was definitely a lot of pressure on us as children. And our parents always kind of chose our careers or chose our path for us. And if we didn't stick on things that would help us make those goals happen, there would be a lot of shame and guilt. And for my own kids, I let my son be as creative as he wants. He loves, building mazes and recording himself. And, Lincoln, my daughter, I'm just supportive of who they are as people. I know we all come out different. And, that's how I feel.
I think for me, on top of what Judy and Wash have already said, my family is very traditional. We celebrate a lot of the Asian holidays, and just little courtesy things like bowing, respect your parents. I really put a lot of pressure on my kids to continue that tradition. I think it's, who we are and where we come from. And I think it's important for them to understand that, and their history and their background. So I kind of focus more on that with our kids.
Leslie, you spoke about missing your parents back in, I think it was Oklahoma, right? a lot in season one. Can we expect to see them at all in season two?
My parents actually come in season 2.
Really? That's exciting. I'm very interested to see them.
Yeah.
And then speaking of your children, those of us that have watched the first season know that your parents, Washington and Judy, they started this tradition of naming your children after American presidents. Now that the whole family has a Washington, a Lincoln, and a Roosevelt, is it possible that a Jefferson is going to be added to the family at some point to complete the Rushmore? Or?
We talked about it.
Okay.
That's for season 3.
Absolutely. Definitely looking forward to it. Now, speaking of just how changing or shooting the show has maybe changed or altered your life at all, what has your experience been like shooting the show up till now? Has it been intrusive at all? I mean, there's scenes that make me laugh, like the time lapse of your father, Ben, standing in Judy's home as it's being built around it. When I watch them, it makes me laugh because the idea of production, like pitching it to him, is so funny to me. But has your experience shooting the show been intrusive at all, do you think?
I wouldn't say it's intrusive because, the crew and the production team, they're very professional, and, they wear like they cover their shoes when they come into our home, and they do everything they can to make it as comfortable for us so that we can, just focus about being on camera. I think the hardest part was season 1. We kind of didn't know what we were getting into. So for me, I was less filtered back then because I was like, oh, nobody will ever see this, but then now I'm like, oh gosh, a lot of people watch this. I should probably rein it in a little bit.
Yeah, I know you had a moment like that, Washington, where you were speaking with your cousin Sammy, and there was a line that stood out to me where she said, are you sure you want that on TV? And I remember hearing that and thinking, I've never in a reality show heard somebody like actually point out like, hey, you're on television. This is something you want public.
Yeah, it just, a lot of the things that are filmed on the trailer or the show are times when I thought that there was no way they would ever put what I said on TV. And, going back to what Judy said, after seeing season 1 and seeing the fan reaction, I tried not to think twice about what I would say, but it's only natural that I try to protect myself more. But I think you also get to see the real Washington, but a different version in season 2.
Awesome. Well, let's see. I had one more question, I believe. However, have any of you ever gone back and actually watched the first season of the show? And if you have, did you notice or realize anything watching it again that you didn't when it occurred at the first time?
I haven't gone back to watch it, but I'll see clips here and there, and I'm just glad that time in my life is memorialized. That I just, it was such a happy time in my life, and such great memories for our parents. I feel like my parents are really proud of the show, like my dad is gung-ho about it. And I just think this is something really for my parents. They love looking back on this and just seeing like this is their legacy.
I cannot watch season 1. I feel like I cry every time when I see myself cry, and to relive all those emotions again, like it's hard for me.
Yeah, for us, it's definitely tough to relive those emotions. But for me, I'm just proud to see my family be able to work on a project together. It's not always easy to be super honest when you could lose the love or respect of your family members, but that's the only hard part about watching it. But other than that, I'm really proud of what we've done as a family.
I think when I watched season 1, I see how Wash and Leslie were having a tough time back then, and to see them now in season 2, like how far they've come, to see that progress. I think that's something that they should be proud of, because there were a lot of tears for them back then. But look at them now.
I'm just crying on the inside now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Oh, it's time to go to work. What?
So Kim's officially my favorite sister-in-law now.
My wife thinks Sammy is a bad influence on me.
Lucky this is not your freaking face.
I
Damn, girl, let it go.